going to go ahead and get started. Holly, I'm going to do a little intro and then you can take it away. So, for those that are attending today, thank you for joining. This is our last workshop for Financial Wellness Month, which has been fabulous. We have a special guest with us today, Holly. Holly has presented and done financial wellness coaching throughout this month. If you've gotten the opportunity to see that workshop or to join her for coaching, it has been fantastic. So a little bit of background is Holly has worked in the financial industry for 20 years, and she's held roles such as a licensed branch manager, financial guide, and small business banker prior to her becoming a financial education manager. Holly has been with Mountain America since 2017, and her passion is making a difference in people's lives through education. She believes that providing knowledge along with resources and tools will help others to financial wellness and overall happiness. Holly is an empty nester of two sons and enjoys adventures with traveling. She loves and cherishes the time she gets to spend with her family and friends. Holly, welcome. Thank you again so much for joining us today. We are very excited about this topic.
Well, thanks so much, Brittany and Sadie. We really appreciate the opportunity as financial education managers that we've been able to come in and do these presentations. We're very passionate about what we do, so having the opportunity to speak to so many people at one time and has really been a great opportunity for us and the people that I've met with one-on-one coaching. I have to say, you Salt Lake County employees are on it like blue bonnet. Like all of you guys that I've met with have been really great at what you're doing with your finances. So again, really thank you for having us. I am going to talk today about investments. So we're going to talk about it's really titled First to 1 Million Wins. And it does say that it's kind of investment 101 for the first 15 years. However, what I talk about really can apply to every age. And I include every age because I'm part of that latter part of the age when it comes to considering investment. So I didn't want to feel left out. But before we get started, I am going to share with you just a little disclaimer. So I want to be clear to everyone that I am a financial education manager. My role is just to give basic knowledge, education about specific financial topics. So today we're going to talk about investments, but the material is general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. So when I'm speaking, I'm saying things like historically or a hypothetical. So just realize that I am not a licensed wealth manager, but we do offer those services with Mountain America. So let's get started. So you've probably, if you've been with us through the other presentations, we've shared this quote, and we really love this quote because it really does kind of resonate with every presentation that we do. And this is from Warren Buffett. And if you don't know who Warren Buffett is, he's a 95 or a 94-year-old gentleman, and his current worth right now is $102 billion. Most of that has been acquired because he's been very successful with his investments. He's a CEO over Berkshire Hathaway. And what that is that's kind of like a holding company that owns several. So I kind of was looking into it. Some of the businesses they own are like Geico and Duracell and Fruit of the Loom. So very diversified companies that he manages. But the quote is, to invest or budget and plan successfully over a lifetime does not require a stratospheric IQ, unusual business insights, or inside information. What is needed is a sound intellectual framework, making decisions, and the ability to keep your emotions from corroding that framework. And so we have talked the last couple of presentations about framework and how you can apply the framework to successful financial wellness. So today we're going to really talk about, the framework that you should consider when it comes to investing. So in the presentation, a couple of things that we're going to cover is setting clear goals and having the right mindset when it comes to your investing, understanding the different kinds of instruments that you need to consider when you're investing, the risk and the volatility, and having enough time to consider with that, understanding the different kinds of accounts. And then lastly, we're going to kind of touch base with just understanding the certain kinds of fees that can go into play. So when we're talking about investing, how many out there, and maybe you can monitor the chat if someone wants to throw out a couple of suggestions with audience participation, but who has heard the term of ROI, return on investments? So a lot of times you hear people say, oh, I had a 10% ROI or an 8% ROI. What are they talking about?
Yeah, we've got a lot of people putting in the chat that yes, they are familiar and know ROI well.
Okay, perfect. So when people are talking about ROI, they're talking about the specific percentage rate that they have earned with their investing. Hopefully they have earned a positive ROI, or they could be talking about maybe the deficit ROI, but typically they are speaking about that specific percentage rate. And so when you're looking at investing, we want to talk about kind of your goal weighted return. And what I mean by that is when you start to think about investing, applying it or starting your investments based off of your goal. And we've talked about establishing goals based off of what's important to you. So when you set up a goal, once you achieve that goal, right, you've reached 100%. That's just the way it is with any kind of goal. You set it, you achieve it, you've gotten 100%. So looking at your strategy or the way you're doing your investment based off of that goal weighted. So how much do you need to invest? Well, it really just kind of depends on what that goal is and the time frame that you're going to allow yourself to have to achieve that goal. Are you in it, do you have, looking at the time frame from now, do you have 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years? Those are all the things that you want to consider before you get into that. And when we've talked about setting goals based off of our emotions and our habits and behaviors, we've talked about, well, last time I talked about having an emotional brain and a rational brain. And that emotional brain, we kind of tied into that caveman, right? So it's very, very reactive and very defensively, where that rational brain, if you can remember, if you joined us last time, very controlled, thought out, calm, prepared. So another question for audience participation out there is, what would be considered a threat with investing? Anybody out there?
We've got loss of investment, fear of loss.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. So when you put when you start with your investing, if you are emotional to it and you're reactive, right? So the market does this, it's up and it's down, and it's all about the time and the volatility of the market. So if it's tied to that emotional brain, when this happens, right, we're reactive, we panic, we have that threat that we're going to lose our money. And if that's the brain or the mindset that we use when it comes to that, you're most likely to want to pull the money out, right? So I've been doing this, like you had mentioned in my bio, over 20 years. And so I have seen this happen quite a bit. And even just over my 20 years of doing it, I have seen catastrophic drops, right? 2008, it was catastrophic. But I've been in it long enough with the 20 years that I've also seen it go back up, and not only go back up, but really exceed to where it was before it plummeted. So you want to consider that when you do your investing. are you going to be able to utilize your rational brain and realizing that when you put that money in as an investment, you put it in knowing that that was going to happen, and you're going to be able to use that rational brain and realize that you've started and you've given yourself enough a length of time to ride that out. Does that make sense? Okay. So we've talked about doing things or establishing your goals for investment based off of your goal, which is tied to your, your moral compass, right? What you value, what's important to you. And then what behaviors are you going to do to achieve that goal? And when it comes to investing, I'll share with you a couple of, like a scenario. So we have two people and they both have the same goal. They both have the goal that they want to buy a home and they want to pay it off within 20 years. But the difference is, are these two individuals, they've identified their values and what's important, and they have two separate. So one values family and security, and the other one values family and money. So same goal, but different values. So their behaviors are going to be different because of those values. The first one is going to say, well, I'm going to pay it off in 20 years. And so for me to be able to do that, I'm going to put additional money every month onto my mortgage. I'm going to apply it to my principal so that I will be able to pay it down quicker and get to my goal of paying it off in 20 years. Where the second person, their value is, family and money. Nobody's right or wrong on that. It's all individually based. But what happens is that person is saying, well, in order for me to make that goal, achieve that goal, I'm going to put money into an investment account. And I'm allowing myself to have that money put into that investment account for at least 20 years. But once that money reaches what the goal is, which is to pay off the mortgage, then they have the opportunity to take that out and to pay off the home. So it's all individual. It's all based off of what's important. So we're going to talk about understanding investment instruments. And so kind of the fun part that we're going to use a gumball as kind of an analogy of it, right? So when you look at investing, so you have your gumball machine and they're all different colors, right? Different colors, you've got, when you are looking at each individual color, they all represent a different share or a different stock within a company, right? So when you purchase one, it's you have that tangible, you own a portion of that company. Now, the price per share is the quarter that we put in. So if we put a quarter in, we get a gumball. The more quarters we put in, the more we can purchase gumballs. And it can be different colors. You can, get all a specific color into one company, or you can, utilize all the different colors. So the different, so blue, yellow, red, pink, orange, they all represent separate shares of different companies. The account, so the jar, really is just the account that's holding all of those different shares. So for instance, this morning I looked at the stock market, and we're going to go back to Warren Buffett's company, okay, Berkshire Hathaway. So the market today started, the price per share for one share of Berkshire Hathaway, I'm going to look at my notes. This morning it started at $452,045 per share. So if it was a gumball machine, I would be putting 1,808,180 quarters in my gumball machine today to buy one stock. So when you're looking at purchasing stocks, right, you buy a piece of company at a time. So let's say, and we've all heard the term, buy low, sell high. So you're looking at a blue gumball. Well, maybe that gumball is super popular, higher demand in July because it's Independence Day and we associate blue with, the red, white, and blue. So maybe that gumball in July, maybe because of the popularity of that or the demand of that gumball, the price point of it is higher than, say, if you were to purchase a green gumball, because a green gumball is probably most likely going to be, higher in demand because we associate green with the holidays. So maybe green's, stock is going to be more expensive in December than it is in July, and vice versa, right? Mutual funds, index funds, and exchange, all of those things, those accounts, they're monitoring the jar, right? All of the different types of shares within different companies. The S&P, right? The Standard and Poor. This is really investing money in the top 100 publicly traded US companies. So you can kind of think about that when you're investing. So we're going to talk about the risk and the volatility of the market. So when stocks go up, like I mentioned, and then they go down, it's volatile, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's risky, but timing makes it more of a risk, like I had mentioned. Determining when you're going to get in, right? So are you allowing yourself 20? Or are you allowing yourself 30 years? So it's not necessarily a risk if you're putting in just in stocks. If you have time when you do those investments into a separate just stock, you're most likely going to have the time to go wade through that volatility. When you're looking at money market instruments, right, they're going to be a little bit less risky because they're more managed. A lot of times when you're talking about investments, they do a lot of, like age appropriate. So, the age, if you start, you're more aggressive than someone that's probably my age. Unfortunately, where I'm probably going to have to be a little more conservative. We're going to talk about dollar cost averaging, and I kind of alluded to this with the blue gumball. So this is a really good example. So let's say we're going to start doing our investing. So in January, we commit, we're going to put $500 into our investment. And we purchase some shares at $10. So for $10 at 500, we purchase 50 shares. And then in February with our $500, we go in to buy shares, but that supply and demand, or, it drops. And so the cost of that share goes down to $8. And again, it's going back to that saying buy low, sell high. So with that $8, putting 500 in, we're actually able to purchase more shares at 62.5. And then March, it goes down a little bit more to $6. So then you're able to pick up even more at 83.3. And it goes up just a little bit in April. So then you're at $8 at 62.5 again. And then May, you go back. Something's happened where that share is now just as expensive as it was back in January when you started. So average cost per share was $8.11 over those months. And you were able to purchase 308.3 shares. So if you're talking about not having dollar cost averaging, you would have just purchased 250 shares with the $2,500. But because of dollar cost averaging, you were able to purchase more shares, 308.3. And actually with the value, you've gotten $3,083 versus the 25. We get asked this a lot. And again, I'm not a licensed financial wealth advisor. I'm just a financial education manager, but we get asked a lot, like, what will I need to invest for when it comes to retirement? Well, the first thing is it's really going to depend on a couple of things. So let's say your goal is to have 50,000 annual per year after retirement. Well, you want to take in consideration what you're going to get to Social Security. And there's a couple of things. If you meet with a licensed wealth advisor, or you can go into Social Security, and it will give you kind of an idea of where you're going to be as far as annual income that you're going to receive. So the difference there is, you're going to have to make up somehow that $27,840 to achieve that goal of having annual income of $50,000. But you need to also consider, how long do you want to plan for after retirement? So in this case, we'll just say you want to save enough that you're going to be able to live additional 20 years. Or people want to make sure that they leave money after they pass for loved ones. And in this case, probably my case, I'm going to spend all my money. I want to have fun. So they're not going to put anything like that. But if you take in consideration, you want to plan for 20 more years, and you're going to have to find that 27,840 to make up for that annual income. You're going to have to come up or find that additional $556,800. But you need to remember, as we all know, there's a thing called inflation. And especially right now, if you look at the cost of goods versus the value of our dollar, right? There's a high demand for a lot of goods, which is which is raising the prices of goods. And we're not getting as much now with our dollar as we have in the past. So when you take in consideration that inflation, it's a different scenario, right? You still have the same goal of 50, and you're still going to receive that same amount with your social, but instead of having to come up with that additional 556,800, you're actually going to have to find that additional 1.8 million to be able to live the lifestyle that you want based off of inflation. Now, this is based off of, this is assuming a 4% inflation rate. So the average rate for the last 100 years is about 3.1. So 4% is, that's what it's about. So we want to talk about time again, and I go back to that several times in the presentation, but if you are looking for, so we're talking about probability of a negative return, and it's all about that time, risk for long time. So if you're doing like those individual stock tradings, you see those guys on the stock floor during the day, and they're constantly buying and selling and buying and selling, and they have that stress on them of trying to catch it just at the right time where they're getting the better deal on the stock that they're purchasing. They're buying low and then they're turning around and selling it high. So if you're doing it daily, you have a greater risk probability of having a negative rate of return. But as you can see, as you go with time, it gets a little bit less. So if you go monthly, it's less, yearly, if you give yourself 5 years, 10 years. But really, if you can dedicate that 20 years, look at that risk. It goes down from a 45% daily clear down to 3%, only having a 3% chance that you're going to have that negative return. Risk for long term. So if you're looking at time and compound interest, here's a couple of different scenarios. So if your starting amount is $100 and you do an additional contribution with every paycheck, if your biweekly pay of $125, and let's say your rate of return is 10%. Well, there's two different scenarios, right? So there's the one with 20 years. So if you're going to put that in for 20 years, you're going to get 207,461. But if you continue that out or stretch that out just an additional 10 years for 30, you about triple it. So you're going to get that 618.5. Okay, and these are hypotheticals again. So then if we talk about things like 401ks, if you have an employer, and I know that Salt Lake County contributes, right? It's to the URS, I believe, but really, history has proven that, you're going to be more successful taking advantage of that 401k money. So if you have an employer that contributes or matches your investment, they'll have a match rate, right? So typically 5 or 6% is usually what I hear the most. It's always a really good idea large or small, that you try to participate in that, because then you're investing other people's money as well, right? So if you're putting in $100 and they match that, so that additional contribution 200 over 30 years, you're going from a total contribution of $195,000 over that 30 years and ending up with the $1.2 million. So you're getting 100% back on that. These are a couple of different scenarios as well. So we're looking at borrower A here. So borrower A, she, maybe she's going to school or, not really working a job that offers any kind of a 401k or any kind of a retirement. So she doesn't start putting money away for that until she reaches the age of 26, which is fantastic because she puts $150 per month for 40 years into her retirement account. So she contributes $72,000 through, the ages of 26 to when she retires at 65. So that's fantastic because if you look down at age 65, she's accumulated over $1.7 million. But look at the difference when we talk about time. Look at the difference we have for someone who starts early. Saver B starts out at 18 years old and starts putting $150 away per month, and she only invests it for 8 years. So her total contribution, she's only put into her retirement $14,400. And after 25, she doesn't invest another dime, but she lets it sit there over time. And so if you look down at the age of 65, by the time she's reached that age, she's got over 2.2. And she never contributed a dime after the age of 25. So this is a very powerful example of what time can do for you. Understanding different kinds of investment accounts, right? So when we're talking about IRAs, whether it's a traditional or a Roth or with your 401, really the difference between those things, we get asked that a lot, but when you're looking at investment accounts, so account titles are really designated like how much you can contribute every single year. There's a maximum contribution amount, or it is a way for the government to determine the tax rate, right? Whether, with traditional or Roth. So we get that asked a lot. And when you're looking at accounts, kind of picture it like a parking lot. So I picture when you go to the airport, you have all of these different sections, different parking lots, but within those lots, you have those specific parking spaces, and you can really put within that, that account, you have the ability to determine what you're going to put into that account. So a specific parking space. Let's see, I think, right. So we get asked a lot, like, what is the benefit? Should I be putting my money away in a Roth versus a traditional? And again, it kind of goes back to really what is important and what your goal is. And so when you're talking about a Roth, you're talking about post-tax contributions, right? So what you're doing is you're putting money away after you've paid taxes on that income, so that when you start to take money out of that account after 59 and a half, you're not paying taxes on that income, versus a traditional where you are contributing to that IRA before you're paying taxes on it, right? So it's really out of that gross income, so that when you reach retirement or when you reach the age of 59 and a half and you can start taking withdrawals, you're going to pay taxes at that time. So the best way to kind of keep in mind or consider when you're determining whether you want to do a Roth or a traditional is kind of to consider where you are at as far as your income is right now and what your tax bracket. So if you're just getting started out in your career and your income is not where you expect it to be at the end of your career, maybe you're making more money at the end of your career than you are right now. Well, then if that's the case, right now you're in a lower tax bracket. So it might be to your benefit if you were to pay those taxes now that you're in a lower tax bracket versus later when you start drawing within 59 and a half, but you're in the latter part or the end of your career and you're making more money. Brokerage accounts, we want to talk about that. You know, with the brokerage accounts, it's all electronic and you have full control. You can go in and answer a series of questions. It will determine, you know, your risk and your time that you're considering. And it's all electronic at your fingertips. So I'd mentioned before, there's a lot of different electronic brokerage accounts that you have access to. Mountain America just recently launched their My Invest app. So it just, you can start out with as little as $5 and really just do, you know, a little bit at a time until you get confident and more comfortable in the process. Some of the other ones is, you know, Betterment, Acorns, Robinhood. I think Acorn and Robinhood's probably the most two popular ones that I've heard, where you have the ability to round up on your purchase and put that extra change or the leftover change into your investment account. So last, I want to talk about kind of understanding fees. There may be fees associated with when you're talking about doing your investments, especially when you're talking about meeting with licensed financial advisors. So generally there is a fee and it's typically a certain percentage rate based off of the success of the investment. Advisors, you know, I would recommend asking them up front what that fee is, you know, what's the percentage rate off of that investment, and then always speak to a licensed tax advisor so that you know when you're talking about that Roth or that traditional, that you seek that expert advice, people who can tell you the correct information on those topics. Advisors, you know, how are they being compensated? Are they a commission only? So based off of the success or the rate of return on your investment, are they getting a certain commission base off of that? Or are they receiving a, you know, a salary base and then commission on top of that? We're talking about your money. We're talking about your investments, and don't feel shy or don't, you know, hesitate to ask those questions up front. You deserve to know how that works. A lot of times, you know, Mountain America, we have the financial wealth management team, and a lot of places, you know, like Mountain America with our wealth management, you know, there's no fee for a consultation. They'll meet with you, and when you meet with financial advisors, they have the ability to look at what your current statements are with what you've invested so far in your life, where it's at, run, you know, hypothetical scenarios, taking consideration the income that you'll be receiving at the time of retirement with your Social Security, and kind of talk to you about those goals that we talked to at first, right? What does retirement look like for you? And how long are you wanting to plan for? So, you know, if you're wanting to just travel the world and do those kinds of things, they're going to take those into consideration when they're working out a retirement plan for you or a financial plan for you. So just to kind of review some of the action items, right? So determining your values. We talked about return on investments, that specific percentage rate. So maybe you set your investment goals that you want it to reach, but keep in mind, you know, your emotional versus your rational, and aligning your goals. That's why we talked about goal weighted return. If you set that goal, once you hit that goal, you're at 100%, and it's not really linked to a specific percentage rate. But aligning your investments with the goals and the behaviors, and we talked about the different comparisons, same goal, different values. Calculate the retirement and your needs and your wants for long term. And highly recommend meeting with a licensed financial advisor that can give you that more detailed information and recommendations. Start investing and staying investing, giving yourself enough time that you can ride through what the being volatile with the market, utilizing your company's 401k. This is really important. You're really missing out on free money. And I always like to kind of give my own personal story with that. When I was 17 years old, I started working retail, and I worked for this little company called Nordstrom, and they offered 401k match. Well, I sat in that, not really understanding at that age what that meant. And they lost me at take money out of your paycheck and put it into this account. Well, I continued to work for that little company for 10 years. And look at and I can kick myself in the pants because I think that was 10 years of free money that I could have been putting away between 18 and 28. So really look at those options and taking advantage of it. And then also remember, reach out to the professionals, the licensed advisors that can talk to you about tax consequences, and don't have a fear of asking what the fees are going to cost. Additional resources. Some of you, I've met with you for one-on-one coaching. This isn't just a members only, because Mountain America has established this relationship with Salt Lake County. We're always happy to reach out and meet with you one-on-one. And I've talked about this in the past, and I will just continue to brag about this. But if you go to macu.com, and you can go into our little education tab, and it will direct you to our bonsai. But the resources that are available here are amazing. The tools, the calculators that will do the math for you, the tools or the resources that are going to kind of test your knowledge and where you are on your investment or your goals and your financial wellness. And again, if you have a young family, teaching your kids financial wellness. It doesn't happen very well in schools. We go out and we do a lot of education trainings to high school age and college ages. But if you have a young family and you want to get your kids starting on financial wellness, or maybe you even have grandkids. So that is me. I know I didn't go a full hour, but I'll just turn that time back to you. Really, again, thanks so much for having us here this month and meeting with all of you amazing people, and keep up the good work.
Yay! Thank you so much, Holly. That had so much wonderful information on there. Would you be willing to stay for a couple of minutes and answer any questions that people may have?
Yes, as long as they're not asking for specific investment advice.
Perfect. Okay, so we have a general question about what do you think about apps like Acorn?
Well, and like I mentioned, I mean, they're really a great way to kind of start out on your own, right? You have those other options with bigger investments, but these are great ways to, start out and kind of get more familiar with how it works, and gaining your confidence level on how it works to where, maybe you get to the point where you feel more comfortable with that whole investment idea, and can maybe go a little bit further than just managing, the little online. But they're really a great tool. And again, it's really something's better than nothing. So if you can start out with just that minimum amount, like, the Mountain America, the $5, and just continue. And I mean, it's kind of fun to watch to see what's happening.
Awesome. We have another question that came in. It says, you mentioned the idea of investing in separate accounts to pay off your home in the future. What sort of product is there for 10 to 20, 10 to 20 year investments?
Mm-hmm. So, when you're talking about specific investment options, there are several. Licensed financial advisors, right? And like I said, there's several of them that will meet with you free of charge as a consultation, but they're going to assess what your goals are and the length of time that you're going to have. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to give you that professional advice because maybe you want something where you know you're not going to touch for 20 years or 30 years, but there also are products and services or products out there that have floor rates. Whatever you put in, you're never going to lose below what you've put in. And there may be options where they're liquid, right? So people tend to think that when you put money away into some kind of investment, that it's locked up forever. Well, there are products out there that you could even look into that would be a liquid option. But again, that would be something that you would want to reach out to your financial advisor. And I know I will throw this out with the Utah retirement system. Um, when you're talking about looking at your retirement, URS has people as well that are licensed that can help you and review your URS accounts. So you may want to try reaching out to them as well.
And for a plug for URS, they actually have free financial coaching as well when it
Yeah.
comes to your account. So those of you that are asking about URS in the chat, they have counseling sessions that you can sign up for free as long as you utilize their services. And we can put the link out there as well for that if you're interested. So thank you for
That,
the reminder, Holly.
yeah, that's a fantastic thing because they're going to be able to look up each one of you individually and see where you are now and put you on track.
Um, I have this question, and this might again be more geared towards URS, but can you explain the difference between a 401k Roth and a 401k IRA?
Well, an IRA, so an individual retirement account, that's a traditional and a Roth, and that's where you're looking at the difference between pre-tax dollar investments or post-tax investments. So there's
Okay,
there's the two different kinds of IRAs.
gotcha. Another question is, what were the investment fees that Mountain America charges, such as like 0.06? And is this a monthly or quarterly term?
Right. So meeting with a financial wealth manager at Mountain America is no charge. So if you want to sit down with them and kind of review what you have, then because they're licensed, they can go over your options. And based off of your options and what you feel confident and comfortable with doing, they would be able to tell you what the cost of that. And so that's where they will say, well, there's a commission or there's a flat rate or a percentage. So it's all going to depend on what you do with your money, where it's placed.
Perfect. And then somebody put in the chat, and it looks like Sadie covered it regarding investing HSA money. And we definitely did have Optum come and present to us. And so if you guys are interested, though, all of our workshops throughout this whole month on all of our financial wellness presentations are recorded and put on our website under workshops. So if you guys are interested, go check those out. There's a lot of great information, again, from URS, from Optum, and again, Mountain America. All of your guys' wonderful presentations are there as well.
And Brittany, I received a question through the private chat. It says, what are
Okay.
some resources to help estimate the amount needed for healthcare in retirement? And I think the Optum workshop would also help cover that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, right. Because those HSAs, though that money that you're contributing, if you never dip into it, or you're maxing, hitting your maximum contribution, there's a benefit to that, and a lot of people utilize that as another form of saving for long term. So I would advise, if it's through Optum, I would advise reaching out to them, as that's perfect resource.
Awesome. And then a few more questions. Sorry. Chat is so small. The window is so small. Okay. Um, Okay. Sorry. 1 second. Okay, if I have a 401k, can I switch it to a Roth and pay the taxes now? Or do I need to open a different account?
Well, so generally speaking, right? If you have a 401k, let's say you have a 401k at a previous employer. Well, you're no longer working there, you're no longer contributing to that 401k. So you do have an option in that scenario where you could close it and roll it over into an IRA, whether it's a traditional or a Roth. That's going to depend on, um, where you're comfortable at, or, assessing or speaking with an advisor or even a tax accountant. But when you close out that 401k, you're given a grace period before you pay a penalty or the taxes on it, because it won't be considered income unless it will be considered additional income that you will be taxed and assessed a fee if you don't roll it over into something, if you're under the age of being able to withdraw from it. So you have that option. You also may have the option of taking a previous 401k if you're no longer working there and rolling it over into your URS account. That would be something you would talk about with the URS, but you do have those options. As far as pulling it out of your 401k now, while there's being a match applied to it, you know, I would seek professional advice on that. I don't know if I would recommend it, because it's working for you. You're getting that free money in deposited into it from your employer. But if you do have 401ks, that is a great opportunity to meet with a financial advisor and look at those options of putting it somewhere where it's going to continue to grow and work for you.
Perfect. We'll take 2 more questions. Is there a good investment for a tax shelter other than a Roth IRA?
Mm. I would talk to a tax advisor on that.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. Last question is, if I transfer my money from a 401k to Roth, do I pay the taxes out of pocket, or is it subtracted from what I have in the account already? Again, we can refer to
Yeah, I'm gonna refer that out to a wealth advisor as well, because I'm not gonna risk giving you the wrong information. Because that could lead to penalties and tax consequences, and boy, I'm so good at general information. I always say I know a lot about a little.
Hey, the information that you've provided today is wonderful, and general information is such a great starting point, right? Because then it provokes these questions within us, and then if you want to know the answer for your situation, again, because it's so personal, that there's tons of resources out there. And again, Holly, will you go over just the resources for coaching that's available at MACU?
Yeah, so let me see if I can go back. You can go on to the mountainamerica.com website and go into financial ed. And then there is one-on-one coaching available for the guides. I don't believe I'm on there as an option yet, but there would be a gal, Talia, that would be on there, or Cassandra would be on there. But honestly, if you're okay, Brittany and Sadie, if anyone's interested in that, maybe they could contact you and I could reach out and get them scheduled, kind of like what we have done with those.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We can definitely do that. I have a few people in the chat that have reached out.
Perfect.
Awesome. And everyone that's in attendance, if you have not already, please sign in to get your points for attending today's workshop. Holly, thank you again so much for your willingness to help us clarify questions and teaching us all about financial wellness and the different areas of that. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Um,
Thank you, everyone. Very nice to be part of Salt Lake County. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yay. Well, thank you guys so much for attending today's workshop. Sadie and I will stay on if you have any additional healthy lifestyles questions, but other than that, we will see you next time. Thanks,
You
guys.
guys are great. Thank you.
Bye,
Be well,
Holly.
everyone.
Thanks, Holly.
All right, we do have a healthy lifestyles question. When do we do our yearly check-ins? It depends on what month you are. I can look you up right now. We're still doing them, the alternate activity virtually. We aren't doing biometric screenings in person yet, but let's look you up. All right. Yes, you are a December participant, so you should have received your alternate activity in December. And what it is you go through different videos of all the biometrics and you answer questions about them. You create a SMART goal. Do you remember doing this, Tracy? All right. Well, email me and I can get you that information so that we can process a rebate for you. Here is my email in the chat box.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in unless it's coming to you privately. Do you see any others?
Nope, that's it.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. I will catch you on